to, but I don't see anyone. So we will recess to close session.
Jay, can you start the recording, please?
Right, I'm going to call the meeting to order this evening, and I will reconvene us to open session, and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thanks, Jeannie. Any questions or adjustments to the agenda this evening? All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 And then action on items heard in closed session, Angie.
There's no action taken.
Okay, thank you. Right, now we will move into our discussion and action items for this evening. Our first one is facilities and maintenance, consideration of approval of resolution number 4, September 21, 22, authorizing emergency procurement of a district public address system and related equipment at the West County High School campuses. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve resolution number 4, September 2021, 2022, authorizing emergency procurement of a district public address system and related equipment at West County High School campuses.
I'll second.
All right, and then is Jenny, are you taking this item? Thank you.
I am. Tonight before you, we have a request for you to approve an emergency resolution so we can rectify our old and antiquated PA system at the West County West County High School. Just to give a little bit of background, and you guys all might know this, but I'm also giving it as background for our community. In 2018, we passed a $91 million bond, and in August of 2018, we received our first round of funding. We also, at that time, started to slate some projects that we knew needed to be addressed at that time. In roughly November of 2019, we identified the PA as needing to be replaced and upgraded, and we started to work with our architect and engineers on that project. In March of 2020, all of our projects came to a grinding halt as we managed through the pandemic. And I think that's a really important thing just to point out, because staff, myself, were redirected to do other things in the district, such as provide technology and IT support. I think Steve got it there. So I just wanted to point, is my mic on now? Hello? You okay? So I wanted to point that piece out, that we did start this project back in March of 2020, or I would say November of 2019, started to work with our engineer and architect on identifying, is it maybe microphone? Should I change it?
Yeah, we had feedback up here too earlier when we were speaking, so I don't know if it's the mic.
How about this? Okay, I'm going to try this one. So where was I? So tonight before you, we're asking for you not to award the $397,983.37. That was both the Laguna, former El Molino campus, as well as the West County campus. At the time when we requested proposals from PCD, we were having trouble with the El Molino, aka Laguna campus PA system, so we asked that it be included. That system is now fully functional. So the price tag for for West County High School is $209,918, or $918.31 for work to be done during a regular day shift. This is likely going to have to be a swing shift project because so much of the work happens in the classroom. So we also had the vendor price it out with the swing shift, which is $239,885.85. Also just wanted to address the bidding process. The bidding process for us, because we are a public entity, can take us anywhere from 2 months on the quick to 6 to 8 months, depending on how much design level needs to go into the project. The reason we contacted this vendor is because we've been working with them for over 20 years. They are experienced in this industry, and they're familiar with our system. Every time we have had a problem over the last 5 or so years, they're the people we call to make repairs to any of our systems. And they have a good, long-standing relationship with many schools throughout the community. They're currently upgrading the Santa Rosa City Schools PA system with a system similar to what we're doing. It's just with a different vendor. We're suggesting using an Atlas system. Santa Rosa City Schools is using Advanced Network. Advanced Network we did price out, and it was approximately 40% higher than what we're suggesting tonight. So I am happy to answer or address any questions that the board and or the community might have. I know there's a little bit of a sticker shock when it comes to facility improvement projects, but we are held to a higher standard than anyone else. We are required to pay prevailing wage, and that increases the costs of a construction insurmountably. And it's just something that we're required by law to do. I know that there's a lot of people out there who have mentioned that the costs of the projects seem a little out of line, but they really aren't. I had earmarked this project district-wide at $500,000. And right now, we're at $250,000 for just one campus.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there any question? Did you want to add? Tony wants to add something.
That'll wake you up. I think Steve, can I give them the wireless mic up there? Or will that work better, Steve?
Because as soon as
That one got me. Wow.
So I just wanted to clarify that the money for this project, isn't it working? Yeah. The money for this project is coming from the bond. It would not be coming from the general fund. So it's one of the bond projects. I think the other thing I wanted to just clarify, and maybe Jenny, you can help, is what's the state of our current system and why is it not working?
Great question. So our current, can you hear me? How come it feels like I can't be heard, but you guys can hear me? The state of our current system is, it's well over 40 plus years. It's run on an analog telephone line system. As many of you know, we don't even use analog telephone lines any longer for phone calls. We use a VoIP system, which is voice over internet protocol. So we would be transitioning from old speaker wire, old telephone wire, to our Cat6 wire. And if you recall a few years ago, you authorized us to go do an infrastructure project with use of E-rate dollars. And this project is actually tied to this project, the Clock Bell PA project, because back in, 2018, we did the infrastructure project where we dropped We brought Cat6 cable into every single classroom in preparation for this because we knew that we would be moving to a technology-based clock bell PA. So just so you guys are aware, the system that we're suggesting installing is a digital clock that will also be a reader board. So in the event of a lockdown or an emergency, they can broadcast a message over that clock and it will read lockdown or earthquake or evacuate, whatever the message needs to say, as well as it has the PA system tied into it. So that is what we're moving forward with. So we are going from a very, very old system to 21st century. Did that answer your question? Thank you.
Is it working? Yeah. Okay. You said that a long time ago we had an engineer look at the system. Are we basing this new system on the plans or what the engineer at that time found?
So the engineer that we hired, where we were in the really preliminary stages of vetting out the project, a lot of what the engineer would be doing would be just basically specifying in plan documents where every network run would go, where every clock bell PA would be placed, and that's a lot of laborious work at a very costly dime. We never got to that part because we don't have very good record set drawings in our district, so we don't have what they call A1 drawings. A1 drawings identify each and every classroom, the size, and just basic necessities of what are in it. So we have to go back to develop those A1 drawings in order to develop a set of plans. But what the engineer did do for us was tell us what systems were out there. And there are not a lot of systems. This is one of 3 or 4 different types of systems that are out there. And this was one of the ones that he suggested to us that we use, or the one that Santa Rosa City Schools is installing. So they kind of provided us some information on specifications of the material that we would be using or the equipment that we would be installing. Does that answer your question? The total cost is $239,885.85 as of right now. There is always some padding that we put into construction projects that is roughly 10% is what we set aside for unforeseen conditions, because while they walked every single classroom and tried to determine their best guess of how long it would take in each classroom where the network drops aren't in the current or aren't in the correct location, it's an estimate. So there could be some potential for this to be higher. There could be some potential for it to be lower because it is estimated at 3 to 4 hours per classroom when the network drops are not in the appropriate location. So it means that we have network drops in classrooms that might be on a corner wall as opposed to the front-facing wall where you would put the clock bell PA.
My last question and concern is, usually when you, and I'm not an expert on this, but usually when you do projects like that, it's my understanding you use an engineer to plan so you know exactly what you need and where you need it. My concern is that if we don't use an engineer, that the extras that we have to add on because we don't know exactly what we need or where we need it, or it's an estimate, the project might actually end up costing more than the cost of the engineer. Do you have any feelings about that?
I do and I don't. The feelings I have about that is our engineer probably wouldn't do any better job than our contractor that has walked the sites, because no one can fully identify where anything is in a building, because it's a building and you don't know until you start going through it. This is why we have unforeseen conditions built into projects. So I think if we brought on an engineer, they would do their best, just like our contractor. What I like about using a contractor and doing a project in what I would categorize as kind of a design build versus design bid build, which is, I think, what we're normally traditionally used to, is that we're working with them to determine the scope of the project. We're working with them to identify the needs of the project. This vendor, PCD, is well-versed in audiovisual and in sound systems. They predominantly work in the school industry locally here, and I trust them. And I've worked with them personally for 20 years while I was at Santa Rosa City Schools and at this district. I don't want to negate the issue of design, bid, build makes the most sense for the majority of projects, and it's something that I have supported as a facilities director for 20 years. But there are often times where you need to go a different route to address a need immediately, and it can sometimes be uncomfortable to our boards and our public to accept that, hey, we're doing this a little bit differently. And so I respect that question so much, because it's hard for me as a facilities person to say yes or no to that question, because I just don't know if we're going to have a full set of plans. I think if we go out and hire an engineer, we're going to spend $40,000 to $50,000 on engineering services. We're going to lose probably 6 or 7 months of time. And right now, the price of construction every day goes up. And I think this project will cost more in 6 months when we're able to bid it than it would if we were to award it tonight. Could there be the potential of unforeseen conditions? Absolutely. And that could be very true even if we did do a design bid build model. Did I address that for you? Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of clarify. You said that, what I heard you say was that we've been working with this company for quite some time, and that the system's already kind of prepped for this stuff. So I would think that it would kind of alleviate, Julie's concern, just because they have been here and working on stuff and kind of prepping it with, I forget what you said that it was kind of prepped with already, the lines.
So, two different things there. We've been working with this vendor in this district longer than I've been in this district. They were a vendor before I started here. I've worked with this vendor in this community since I was at Santa Rosa City Schools, so I've been a facilities director locally for about 20 years now. That is hard to say out loud. Do not like that. Then the second part is, a couple of years ago, with an E-rate funded project. E-rate is when you see the little taxes on your cell phone bill or your AT&T bill or your cable bill that are like 12 or 18 cents, all that money goes into a fund in California, and it goes towards education, specifically teleconnect education. So we are able to secure money to do technology upgrades in schools. We apply for that money on an annual basis. A few years ago, we got approximately $140,000 from E-rate funding. We used our bond funding and that funding to do an infrastructure project upgrade, where we went from old, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, old like internet lines to Cat6 cable. That's also when we brought over dark fiber. And we've done that in connection with SCO and Sonic. So that is what we've upgraded in terms of our internet infrastructure. At the time, we knew that we were going to need a clock bell PA upgrade, and that we wanted to prep for that. And so what we did at the time with those, with the E-rate funded project, was we brought all the wire to the classroom in preparation for this. So if we hadn't done that, this would likely be $1 million project.
So thank you, Jenny, very much for that information. One of my concerns as a former safety director for a large medical facility is safety. And we heard here last week from a number of people, including a student. We heard from teachers. We heard from parents their concern about the fact that our system was maybe a little archaic, and that they had a concern for their safety and or their student safety. And I am just curious as to why we wouldn't move forward with this now because of that concern. We've already had an incident that gave us great concern. And if we wait to go out to bid on this project, as Jenny said, it could be 2 to 6 to 8 months or longer, that we end up kind of losing the time, the urgency. Someone stated in something that they sent me that this isn't an emergency. I don't know what more of an emergency is than our children's safety and our students, and our staff and our teachers' safety than this. So I'm a little perplexed as to why someone wouldn't think that what happened wasn't an emergency.
Did you want me to respond to that?
That was a question.
Oh, okay. This was a project on my list prior to us knowing that we had some issues this year that needed to be dealt with. It was on my radar to, quote unquote, for lack of a better word, revive the projects that we stopped prior to the pandemic. And after last week's meeting and hearing the concern regarding student and staff safety, I had received the quote and started to coordinate with legal, asking if there was any option to work on this project. I do want to let you guys know we are what they call a CUPCA district, California Uniform. I can't remember all the acronyms, but you guys authorized that a few years ago. And we are allowed per that to go over the $15,000 bid limit and go up to $60,000 direct to consumer without going out to bid. We are also allowed to informally bid up to $200,000, and we are also allowed to award an emergency project up to any threshold because you guys passed that without having to go to the county superintendent for his authorization. And so after having that conversation with legal, talking through the true safety issue that happened, they were on board with it meeting the threshold and criteria to declare an emergency and move forward with this project. And that's why I went to Tony and had the conversation with her, and we felt compelled to put it in front of the board. If you don't move forward with this tonight, can we move forward with design, bid, build? Absolutely. That will be the next step. But I did feel that this was a necessary project and wanted to bring it forward for at least consideration and discussion.
All right, thank you. We do have public comment on this item, one public comment and then about 6 written comments. Do we want to stick with 2 minutes like we have been doing? Okay, so we will, it's Steve Griffith.
Can you give me 1 second to reset the clock?
Yes.
I want to tag team here.
If you just give it a second until she gets the clock set. Thank you.
Can't wait.
You ready? Just.
Am I waiting for a go signal?
Yeah, just give me 1 more second, sorry.
Oh, sure.
I didn't practice this today. All right, we're going to take it down to 1. So, Steve, you're good.
Okay, good, thank you. Hello, Board, Steve Griffith. I came to this meeting tonight rather concerned because I was confused about this item, seeing how bluntly it was phrased from seemingly out of the blue. After talking to Ms. Bruneman and hearing her description tonight, I am totally in favor of proceeding as she describes. I understand, Julie, your concern about engineering. As a person who's done a lot of building permits over the years, engineers can really saddle a job with lots of extra hours, time, and complications. So I would say that the main problem now, to me, so sorry, excuse me, is the lack of context and explanation that was provided with this item to those of us who read the item and went, well, 400K, 397, that seems really quite high. What's the deal? However, now, like I say, I've heard the explanations, so I would say to this board that this demonstrates a continuing need to be as transparent and informative as possible. So I say yay on the project.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to give this a shot. Okay, so I'm going to read the comments that were submitted. The first one is from Gillian Hayes. If this emergency request for $400,000 for a PA system isn't a perfect example of... How about this? If this emergency request for $400,000 for a PA system isn't a perfect example of a rushed consolidation and poor planning for our children, I don't know what is. This should have been addressed long before students were on campus, not a month in. Time and time again, this superintendent and board majority has shown lack of care for our students' needs while pushing a rushed consolidation process through. Elmo has a perfect working system, yet for $600K you shut the school down, now spending way beyond the consolidation savings even with this one item. I assume you are using infrastructure bond monies to purchase the system. Why not get a bid and ensure this expense is the best deal, not the only deal you have researched? You could put a wireless system in place cheap in the interim. Not a thoughtful process. The superintendent is leading you down. Again, very disappointed in this recommendation. Poor money management that could have been avoided with thorough planning. Again, that's from Gillian Hayes. This one's from Debbie Ramirez. I object to the approval of resolution number 4. Yes, it is important to establish emergency notification systems throughout the school. However, this is not an emergency as defined by Public Contract Code 22035 and 22050. The district has been aware of the PA system deficiencies for quite some time and has failed to fix it, meanwhile asserting that there was plenty of time to consolidate El Molino to the new pasted-together campus made up of the former Annalee and Laguna campuses. Furthermore, while a future incident similar to the one that occurred on September 9th would be somewhat improved by having a fully functional PA system, a complete and well-practiced safety plan should be the priority. Has the district considered supplementing the existing PA system with a wireless audio or digital warning system in the areas that do not have current working PA systems? This should have been done proactively. As a taxpayer in this district, I'm very concerned that a cavalier expenditure in the amount of nearly $400,000 is being considered without taking the time to investigate more cost-effective options and go out for a competitive bid as required by statute. A resolution such as this is only appropriate in the event of storm damage, earthquake damage, or other emergency situations that occur and make the campus unsafe. Failure to plan on the district's part does not constitute an emergency for the taxpayers. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration, Debbie Ramirez. This one's from Jesseline Mills. Dear board members, spending $400K without going through the bidding process is completely irresponsible. I realize Ms. Beal is recommending doing this through emergency or exigency rules under public code, but please reconsider. Let me remind you, the school would not be in this position had they listened to the public and community in the first place and did not rush this botched consolidation. Let me ask you, is this how Ms. Beal plans to proceed on all bidding? The building repairs, increase in bathrooms needed, all of this could be considered an emergency, all due to a failed failed plan, failed leadership. And at what cost? The cost of our children's safety, and now cutting out the public in the bidding process. $600K would have saved Elmo, and now Ms. Beal wants $400K without due process and public input. Enough is enough. Please reject this resolution and go through the proper process. Thank you, Jesseline Mills. This one says, I'm so appreciative for the quick action of the administration to resolve the critical safety issue brought to light recently. Communicating with students and staff during emergencies is essential. Fixing the facilities has often seemed to take longer than it feels like it should, so the sooner the better. I've heard talk that there are some people who say the cost of fixing the PA system is too expensive. Perhaps they feel that the district should go to bid. As a former trustee of this high school district, I've seen that the bidding process is time-consuming. It's normal, non-emergency situations, that's fine. In situations that involve bodily threats to the school community on campus, I call that an emergency. The first and foremost duty of a teacher, staff, principal, superintendent, and board member is to protect the safety of the students. The district is so fortunate to have the Measure A bond funds to pay for it. In this situation, there's no time for debating or delay. And that's from Diane Landry. This comment is from Corey Lott. Hello, board members, and thank you for your work and efforts. Now that the consolidation of Annalee and Elmelina are complete, I would be very curious to hear what the master plan is for upgrading the facilities on the West County campus. It seems as though the students are extremely crowded without nearly enough bathroom access or food facilities to accommodate the number of students. And there continue to be the age-old stories of no air conditioning in classrooms, making the environment uncomfortable. I hesitate to make a public comment, but I felt very concerned when I saw the consideration of spending almost $400K on a PA system, which may be needed, but it would also be helpful if you could please share with us what your overall master plan is for spending on the facilities so that we can make sure that student needs will be prioritized and met. Thank you so much for taking my comment. I look forward to hearing what is decided. Respectfully, Corey Lott. And the final one. Good evening. My daughter is a student at West County. I noticed on the board agenda the purchase of a PA system for around $400,000. Our family owns a local telecom company. We have a C7 license and install low voltage cabling equipment like PA systems. The amount of $400,000 seems extremely high. We have been in business for over 25 years and would be willing to offer our free expert consultation on your needs. Thank you, Wendy Emmert.
Okay, thank you, Tony. I'm going to try this mic, and hopefully, I apologize if there's bad feedback. So any other comments from the board? Okay, I have one comment before we move to vote, and I think this is, and if we do this, or we have this process, just let me know. But one thing I was thinking about, and just some of the feedback that we've gotten from the community around both this week, and this came up with the contract last week, these both seem to be vendors that we've used for quite some time. And I know within the county system, county purchasing uses a process called sole source or single source, where you actually document out why you may, for sole source, why you might go to a vendor and directly without going out to bid, and documenting that as far as like we've worked with this vendor for 20 years, we know the research, you document some of that criteria and then it's signed. And I think that's a good, transparent way, and it might help address some of the community concern that's come up around a couple of these contracts, just so we have a process put in place. And then single source is if you do the research and you document that that's really the only vendor that does this service, that then you might be able to go directly with that vendor without doing an open type of bid process. So if we do already have something like that in place, just say we do, or maybe we could revisit that and or just let people know that those documents are available if we are documenting some of that content, because I do think that's a lot of the feedback that we've heard on this contract and the contract that we looked at last week around just some of those elements that are for both of those pieces.
So that's a little bit of a complicated response, and it's complicated because we're a public entity. And public entities have rules and public contract code that we have to follow.
And so
And
is
what
the
you're talking
county.
about there is sole sourcing, and we do
Yeah.
not sole source as a district.
Why do we not? Is that something we could?
It's a complicated and very convoluted process, and in order to sole source, you're sole sourcing equipment, not vendors.
We do, I would maybe contact someone
We're a
purchasing.
CUPCA district. We pre-qualify bidders. So our bidders have to sign up to be on our list. And we do that through a third-party company called Quality Bidders. And so they have to meet a threshold of criteria, and we pick from the vendors on that list because we're a CUPCA district. Does that make sense? So in order for us to work with any vendor for any project, whether it's maintenance, routine restricted maintenance, whether it's bond funded, general funded, or anything, for construction related projects, they have to be on our vendor list, and they have to qualify every year in October. We have to advertise locally in 2 different advertisements, usually the Builders Exchange and one other place, typically the Press Democrat, and they have they can qualify at any time. So it's usually a 30-day window that we keep open for them. So we do choose vendors on that list. PCD, who the vendor is on our list. When I say that we've worked with them for 20 years, I'm saying they're who we call to repair stuff, not necessarily who we call to do massive replacements. If we did put this out to bid, they would be a responder of that.
No, and I understand how the process works. I think, I'm always on the side of executing contracts. I don't work in the purchasing department, and so what you're telling me, because the county is a public entity, so that is consistent, and the county is able to do this type of process, but we're different because we're CUPCA, and
We're a CUPCA district, yeah.
we can't do this type of documentation or process because we're
I
a
don't
CUPCA
know
district.
what that process is, and I've never heard of it before. The only thing I've ever heard of is sole sourcing, and sole sourcing is when we decide that as a district, we want to use dorma locks, for example, and we just adopt that as a district standard, and then we are allowed to sole source that piece of equipment. Does that?
No, I do
make
this,
sense?
I do this with my contracts with the county, so, all I'm recommending is it might be something to look into, because it might help justify for the community some of the reasons why we're going, because it just allows you to have additional criteria to look at, to say, hey, we picked this person, we've documented why we picked this person, because I fill these out for the county whenever we're doing either a sole source or a single source.
And I
so.
believe that's what we're doing with Quality Bidders, because we are doing reference checks,
Okay.
and I'd be interested in what they do. We hire a third-party company to do that for us because we currently lack the staff and the resources.
Yeah, the county has a
So-
whole purchasing department.
They have an entire department, and purchasing typically doesn't handle construction contracts in a school district. So when you're talking about vendors that you're using, I wonder if it's procurement.
It's not procurement. So we've done this with, many
I mean,
different types
I'll
of.
follow whatever
yeah.
processes you guys want us to follow, but right now, staffing's kind of an issue for us. We don't have enough bodies in my department to do the work. And I'm being just honest.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, and because the community was wondering about it, did you look at any systems that could be used in lieu of a PA system, at least temporarily? And also, is there any type of like backup system in case the PA went down?
Both great questions. We have an option, if the board does not approve this going forward, to address getting our PA over to the former Laguna campus so that they can hear the announcements from this campus. We have a solution for that. It will cost roughly $4,000 to $8,000. We also have one classroom on campus that will cost the equivalent of that $4,000 to $8,000 for just one classroom because it doesn't have any infrastructure in it, and that's the Opportunity 9 classroom. As far as everything else in the district, we've done what they call toned the campus. So on a Saturday, we came in and we played music over the PA, and we went into every single classroom and turned up the volume and down the volume and adjusted it where it needed to occur. There aren't any temporary systems that I'm aware of. I know I've heard people reference tonight a wireless system, but we already struggle with Wi-Fi issues, so Wi-Fi systems are not reliable, especially when you have an internet outage. So there probably could be stuff that we could research. Again, if the board isn't comfortable tonight with awarding this and you want us to come back and do some further research, I'm happy to do that. I just felt that this might be something we wanted to consider as an emergency and address some existing safety issues. I'm happy to do whatever the board directs me to do at this point, and I don't have all the answers to those questions, unfortunately.
Any other questions or comments from the board before we vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now moving on to education services. We have a public hearing on sufficiency and insufficiency of instructional materials, so we will open that public hearing. And Tony, do you want to give the overview during the public hearing, or?
Yeah, I can do it now.
Okay.
These are working.
Yeah, they're working.
Nice, okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So this is an item that comes to the board every year at around this time. And it certifies that we have sufficient instructional materials for all of our classes. Sufficiency means that there are enough textbooks for students in the class and to take home. And if there is a deficiency, that deficiency has been addressed through ordering of those textbooks. So as of today, I can tell you that any textbooks that were not available in classrooms have been all ordered. All the orders have been made, and we can declare that we have sufficient instructional materials for all of our classes.
Thank you. And is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment during the public hearing? Do we have any comment cards or any? Okay. All right, we will move on to the next item, which is consideration of approval of resolution number 1, September 21, 22, sufficiency or insufficiency of instructional materials, and I need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Yes, we heard the overview, so do any board members have any questions on this item? Go ahead, Angie.
I just had a quick question. What's the timeline on getting the materials, and do they have like temporary access?
Yeah, the materials that were missing were small in number, except for a couple classes that were new classes that needed full class sets. So I think there were 2 classes that needed additional, almost close to full sets. The rest were like 5, 10 that just needed for those classrooms. So the information from business from both Andrew and Ann was that the amount of money that was needed to provide sufficient textbooks was around exactly the same amount that we spend every year on sufficiency of textbooks. So there wasn't any additional needed due to the consolidation.
Okay, any public comment on this item? I'm assuming none because we didn't have any on the last one, but any public comment cards? No. And no emails? All right, we'll bring it back to the board. Any comments on this item before we go to vote? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now we will move to our next item, which is consideration of approval of provisional appointment of district trustee. So as everyone is well aware, the board has decided to make a provisional appointment to fill the vacancy that was created by the recent resignation from one of our board members. And by law, this is an open process. So tonight we have the interviews, and we will be selecting the candidates. We've received and reviewed each applicant's application materials.
What's that?
Pardon me?
Oh, the sound guys are talking.
Oh, okay. Is everything okay? All right. So we'll interview all the board applicants tonight, and the applicants will be asked all the same questions and to ensure an equitable interview process. We will be asking, once I'm done doing our introduction to the process, the board will actually be moving down to the audience to ask the questions, and the interviewees will come up to the stage. So we'll be switching. And we'll be putting the names of each applicant will be placed on slips of paper in a hat, and I will randomly draw those names to determine who will go first, second, and third, so the order, we'll understand the order for the interview for the questions. We'll alternate the order of the responses for each of the questions so that each candidate will have the opportunity to go first for the questions this evening. And each interviewee will be timed this evening. You'll have 3 minutes to respond to each question. At the end of the interviews, we will have a time period for public comment. If anyone wants to make comments before we go into the nomination process, and then make any, and making the motion for appointment into the new office, for the new officer. So with that, are there any questions from any of the board members? So with that, I'm going to ask the board members to stand up and gather your items, and then we will come down to the audience, and we will ask the 3 candidates that are here to be interviewed this evening to come up to the stage and select a seat, and then we will begin. Should I pick the names up here or do it when I'm down?
There's a name right there.
Do we have the slips of paper?
I have them right here.
Okay.
So you guys will see where.
Okay, so I'll just do that when I come to, okay, because you're down there. Okay, all right. Everyone can get up and we will play musical chairs.
Hey, Steve, while I got you back there, do we know what's going on with the audio? If I'm going to pass the mic around, or if that's the best approach?
The audio seems to be working now.
These are working.
Yeah, these are working now, so I'll bring the mic down with me. Yep.
Will you take that one with you, Kelly? Jenny, they're going to use these, right? The board? Maybe the third row so they can see you. Third or fourth row.
Let's see you do that dress, Julie.
Oh, thanks.
I do.
There you go.
I will ask the second. Angie's asking the third. Julie will ask the fourth.
Right here. So when you're speaking, you just hit the button.
The button that says push.
Kelly's asking the fifth? I'm the third. Oh, thank you.
Just push.
Right there. All right, so we did do the name polling. It was a very fair process. The candidates saw me do it and know that it wasn't, that we did it in a fair way. So it's Bill, Steve, and then Patrick will be the first round. And then the second round, Steve will go first, and subsequently we'll go through that order. So we will start the interview process. Everyone can see that there is a timer in front. So we flipped around the timer so you'll have a sense of the time that you have this evening. And I think with that, do any of you have any questions about the process, or are you clear?
Don't put them too close or you'll get reverb.
Yeah, if you go too close, you will get the feedback.
So is this
That's
sounding?
too close. That's too, yeah.
Checking, checking, checking.
You're perfect. They actually collect, yeah, you're good.
Good, glad I asked.
So leave them off unless you're speaking at that.
Yeah, because if you have all of them on at the same time, then you'll also get feedback. So we will start. Bill,
Hello.
you're good? Are you ready? Okay.
Ready?
All right, so the first question this evening is, please introduce yourself and say why you would like to be on the West Sonoma County Union High School District Board of Trustees.
Hi, my name is William Olsman. I was a 27-year employee of this school district. I taught high school at El Molino. I taught high school much less time at Annalee as well. I want to be here because I think I want to be on the board to serve the remainder of Ms. Fadeev's term only. I'm not interested in being political. I know that sounds unusual for me. I want to help heal our community. When I go around Sebastopol, my wife and I have started walking like 3 to 4 miles every day. I see so many of those Save Annalee signs. And at first I was like, what is that about? What does Annalee need saving for? And then I found out from some friends of mine that they didn't want to have, or at least the people putting those signs out there, didn't think that all those kids from El Molino should be at this school. They thought it was way too big, way too crowded, and a rushed decision. When I talk to former colleagues, they are trying so hard, just like I think most people in our district are in a very difficult place. We've been divided before in this district, as many of you remember. To bring unity to a district, I think requires more than making a decision and simply moving on. If I were convinced that moving forward with the consolidation is best for all members of this community, then I could help to convince those who remain opposed, and ardently so. I would like an opportunity to learn what I do not know about consolidation and why it was the only answer, as 3 board members at that time felt. To have a school board even contemplate a rescission when kids have already been moved, when there has been so much upheaval, would be very difficult. That's why I'm not saying I want to be on this school board in order to rescind consolidation. That is not my position. As I stated first, I want to help unify this district. I think we all know that it needs a little help in getting unified. I think we're far from that, and I think it's very important. I think the example that the football team set is a great one for the students, and I think they're trying. But I don't think it's a long-term, lasting healing, and I think I could help to heal. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, do you need me to repeat the question, or are you? Okay,
Unmute. No, I'm fine with the question. Thank you.
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Griffith. I've lived in Forestville for 10 years. I was a teacher prior to that for 15 years, public schools. Part of why I'm here tonight is my deep and abiding belief in public schools. And as we know, our district has been in some turmoil. So I've been an active volunteer in many community events, from parades to fundraisers to supporting all of the organizations at my kids' school. They both are proud grads of West Sonoma County schools, in our case, El Molino. My interest in being on the board is to help ensure, to the best of my ability, all of the new students here now and to come during this time of turmoil to get the best education they can, which is to paraphrase the mission district, the mission of this district, the mission policy. So it seems to me that one of the most important things about democracy overall is participation. So in a big, broad sense, I'm here to participate. I'm here to continue my lifelong involvement in education and public affairs. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. All right. Now, Patrick, do you want me to repeat the question, or are you, okay?
No, I'm good. Jenny,
Okay.
you want- It's okay. Good evening. I'm Patrick Nagel. Actually, my name is David Patrick Nagel, but I go by Patrick. I come from a long line of David Nagels here in the West County. My family's been in the West County for a long time. And when you ask the question, why does one want to be a part of the board? I actually agree with both of these men, and that is to make a difference and to lend some of my unique experiences and unique abilities to help the district move forward and make the best school system that we possibly can. I actually grew up both here in Sebastopol and on the coast. I actually grew up at the Sea Ranch in the Guala Point Park. I know what it's like to be the kid who gets picked up first an hour before school or an hour and a half before school, the first one picked up and the last one dropped off at night. I know what it's like to go through that and the trials and tribulations of spending extra time on the bus. I know what it's like to, spend a lot of time, traveling to and from. And I think that gives me kind of a unique perspective when you talk about the kids in our outlying parts of our district, because I've been that kid. I also think that as a group, as a community, and I'm talking about the greater community of the West County, we need to kind of come together, because the reality is we have more in common than we have apart, and I think we're spending a lot of time focusing on the things that make us different as opposed to the things that make us together. And one of those things is we all want what's best for our children. We all want what's best for the kids. We want the best educational system that we can possibly provide with the money that we have. And what we need to do is we need to invest in the school, invest in the teachers, because if we give the teachers what they need and we're able to recruit and retain the teachers, then we're going to provide the best education for our kids, because happy teachers are going to be happy to teach in our school. So I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of the change. I want to be a part of something that makes it better. and go from where we are to where we need to be. And I think I have a lot of experience to do that. In my free time, I'm a executive with a food manufacturing company. I make big decisions every day. I manage a budget of well over $100 million. And I'm very good at taking very complex things and breaking them down into simple steps and to try and see those through to get the best result that we possibly can. Oops.
Thank you. I think, Jeannie, you're next. And Steve will go first on this one.
Now I think it's on. Thank you. So this will start with you, Steve, and then we'll go to Patrick and then Bill. As a board member, what do you see your role in supporting student success?
Well, the role of a board member is somewhat laid out already in the job description. Pardon me, I did a little research before coming to this meeting, and I went online and I looked at the job description on the website, and it talks about the roles of board members being to set policy, to ensure that the superintendent has the direction and the support to implement that policy, and then to monitor how those policies are working out, and especially to listen to the stakeholders. So those are all things that are the role of a board member. Now that's a little cut and dried. I think what we've seen is that there's many various voices of many groups of stakeholders, parents, students, families, community members, business people, and sorting through all that to be able to come to consensus on what is best for the kids. So we have to start with that. I believe that my role as a board member would be to use whatever talent I have at outreach, at engaging with people, at working with people. The role of a board member is one of 5. So consensus becomes, again, very important. So consensus on the part of the board to support the students in the district. Now, there's all manner of corollary duties and things that come up. Witness just this evening the talk about the emergency PA system, something that has to be dealt with, it seems to me, but through a process, I think, of the greatest transparency possible so that the community can understand what's going on and at least be informed enough and then support our efforts to support the students in the classroom, in the hallways, and with extracurriculars as much as possible. So there's a broad range of roles of a board member, that's for sure. I know I've watched you all in action and I've seen you wear many hats. So I hope that I have a chance to wear a lot of those hats too. Thank you.
Yeah, I think when you ask the question, role in student success, I think that's a hugely broad question, because student success comes in many shapes or sizes, right? Because obviously one hat doesn't fit all, and kids have many different interests. So the role of the board is as I understand it, is one of oversight. You're ensuring that money is being spent appropriately. You're ensuring that rules are being followed appropriately and that we're following all the necessary protocols. But beyond that, the reality is it comes back to program offerings and things that keep students engaged in our school. For some kids, that's sports. For other kids, that's band. Some are into ag, some are into drama, dance, culinary. I don't want to leave anyone out, but all those things are the anchors that keep students coming to school, because so many kids, they don't necessarily love the school part of school. So we have to find those things that make them want to be here, that make them want to show up, that they're able to participate in, and then in turn makes them successful. So I would view my role as trying to, as Steve mentioned, listen to the kids, listen to the community, and find those avenues where we can, apply the broadest stroke to ensure the greatest number of kids are successful through the school system. Because if we can keep the kids, interested in the various offerings here on campus, they will then in turn do well and be successful and leave here with not only a good education, but a good sense of belonging. Because I believe that no matter what your extracurricular activity or whatever it is that draws you to come and to be here on campus and be, quote, successful, is that you learn so many life lessons in doing that. How to have a goal, how to take the necessary steps to achieve those goals, how to deal with successes and failures, how to, those are all incredible life skills as we leave the hallways here of our high school and get out into the real world. If you've been able to apply yourself, that in turn is what makes you successful, is that you've learned how to have successes, learned how to have failures, and learn how to apply those lessons down the road. So my role would be to give all the kids, or as many kids as we possibly can, the opportunities and the avenues to find their success and to find the things that's going to make them successful.
I would like to hear the question again.
As a board member, what do you see as your role in supporting student success?
Thank you. As a board member, in order to support student success, I think it's important to know students. I think it's important to get into the schools. Now, I know that's not always the most popular opinion, but I think a board member, like any person working with high school students, has to be in the schools, or how are you going to know who you're working with? I think a board member should be an accessible person to students. I don't mean during a board meeting, but I'm ready as a retired teacher to give 100% of my working time to this job. I think it's that important. Our students are doing an amazing job so far, but this is the very beginning. We had a newspaper article about COVID in our schools. It concerns me as a former teacher and as a current community member that this school is so stuffed to its gills. That's a concern I have. I can't support student success as a board member until I really understand the students and their situation, and then the teachers and their situation. So I would get out into the community first if I'm selected for this, because I've been retired a few years and I don't think I know those populations now. I have to educate myself. I think it's very important that I be a flexible board member. I know I'm not always known for that. I know I'm known for my passion for what I believe in. But I believe in this school district and our better angels. And by that, I mean that yes, I'd be a 1/5 of this board, I understand that, and only a temporary one, only to the end of Ms. Dave's term. But I think that by educating myself about the population, that is the best way that I can then give my opinions on policy, give my opinions on new proposals. I need to be a really good listener as a temporary, as a fill-in for an already open board seat. I think the person who gets that can best support student success by using the 2 ears and one mouth in that proportion. As a past president of the Teachers Association, I know well how school boards operate. I know school board budgets. I know how to listen, and that's what I would do.
All right, this time we start with Patrick. In looking at the issues this district faces, which is the most challenging, and what will you do to help us meet this challenge?
Wow. If you want to, I think the most challenging issues are kind of twofold and maybe kind of linked together. I think the first issue that's of a challenge is right now the lack of community trust within the district itself. I think we've reached a place where there's a lot of animosity toward the decisions the board is making or not making. And I think we've kind of got ourselves into a predicament where the community is, instead of focusing on the things that are working, they're really focusing all of their energy and attention onto those few things that are not. And I think that rolls into other pieces, almost like we're kind of stuck in this place where we can't really lift ourselves out of this hole. If I was to be selected, I would help get us out of that hole by helping find a policy in a way in which we can communicate better with the community. We can be more transparent, as Steve mentioned earlier tonight. I think those things are of brutal importance. And I also think that, we need to find avenues and ways to shout out our successes. There's lots of great things happening here that is getting overshadowed by some of the unfortunate negative things that are happening. But unfortunately, as a society, we spend a lot of time focusing on the negative and not a lot of time focusing on the positive. I would try to do my best to shine a light on those things that are working, shine a light on the things that are being successful, and kind of start focusing the energy in that direction. The next big challenge, obviously, is we have a looming teacher negotiation. This district had a strike not so long ago. And the challenge there is to find the money available that we have and to offer our teachers the best wage that we can actually offer them in the hopes of retaining and recruiting them. I know I mentioned that before, but that's very important to me. Sonoma County is an expensive place to live. It's a beautiful place, but it comes with a price tag, and I want us to have the best that we possibly can and that we possibly can afford. And I would work, with my expertise in the budget. I spend time on the Superintendent Budgets Committee, and I would work hard to work through those budgets and to try to find the right way to maximize our offering to the teachers, because I think that is important to the whole, community of the school. So those are the two challenges. That's how I would help to work together and to hopefully make it a better place.
All right, next we go with Bill. Do you want me to repeat the question? In looking at the issues this district faces, which is the most challenging, and what will you do to help us meet this challenge?
Okay. It's a very difficult question to single out one issue. But I think the consolidation and then the resulting high number of students at this school creates a double issue. It creates the issue of communication, I agree, and the issue of safety. Being one board member, I think, again, that the ways that I can help goes a lot from my experience in negotiations. In learning the mandates that come from SCO don't always have to be followed. And that's maybe blasphemous for a candidate for the school board to say, but I used to say it all the time as president, and as president of the association, and I also used to say that tenure is a terrible thing. So when union people would get so upset with me for saying that, I would say, look, society's coming down this track, and it's coming right at us on tenure. We ought to be out in front of that. So now, turning to our situation today, our communities are coming at us. I heard that during the 2-hour lockdown, there were parents literally slamming doors. I want my kids out of here, it's not safe. We have to do a better job of communication clearly, and that's a very difficult job. One concrete way that I know I can help is I'm a pretty good talker. And I would, like I said, devote much of my time to getting out into the community. I could see us having town hall type forums. And I understand that because of COVID, that would be somewhat difficult, but like this was organized tonight, I think we could organize it not to only be Zoom. I think people have to be able to speak their mind on safety. I think we have to look seriously again at how many students are in this school and what solutions could be made. I understand that we're using a 3-foot safety, distancing safety, but when you come and you go into classrooms, do you really see that? Does that concern you? That concerns me greatly. I think we could do a better job of using our facilities than we are. I would try to help in that area. Again, if I'm paddling up the wrong creek and I'm still appointed because you take a risk, I'll listen, and hopefully you'll teach me.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
No,
Okay.
it's a whopper. That question got so much to it.
You're great.
So I would say, to start with, I think we should pay attention, if I might briefly talk about the general context of challenges to education, because we in West County are under the gun of those challenges. And those are, briefly, underfunding, number one. Number two, the money. Number three, underfunding of money. That's sort of the root of a lot of our problems, and it can't be denied. I don't have the expertise with budget, perhaps, that Patrick does of a multi-million-dollar company, but I certainly have expertise with running building projects, real estate ventures. And so I would bring those to bear with these challenges. But to continue with the context of underfunding, especially in California, it's not true everywhere, there's been a general decline in esteem in which teachers and education, public schools are held. There's been competition with private schools. There's been a decline in enrollment. We've heard a lot of mention of that over the past couple of years. Teachers in general, the challenge is in general and to this district to continue to do more, expected to be more, far more than in the past. Provide more services, whether it's in the classroom academic or whether it's wraparound services of nutrition, healthcare, counseling, assistance. So all of that we're expected to do with less resources. So those are the general challenges that we find ourselves in. And then we've got some real contentious feelings about deep-rooted, earned, and understandable attachment to home schools. I think by home I mean like local, your local school. And so Patrick also said something very important, that is, all the parents in this district love their kids and want the best for their kids. So the challenge facing this board and that I would try to address, I believe, like Bill, I have some skill in outreach. I have some skill in engaging people, talking to them, listening, asking questions. So to face the challenges of funding and context and divisiveness, I would use all those skills to help our district. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Bill, I think we start with you. How would you, as a board member, seek feedback from parents and community members in the West County?
One thing I would certainly do is invite email, and I think the idea that I had of having town hall type meetings, I understand that because of the Brown Act, you couldn't have the board doing that unless you made it a board meeting, and I wouldn't want to do that. I think it would be really important to have a meet the individual board member night for community members to be able to ask me questions in an open forum that I would answer. I think it's really important to get out and get into the community, like I said before. And then I think I would need some education from the four of you, because you're the ones who've been working with all this stuff during a contentious time. And as I've said from the first question, even though I have a lot of knowledge of state funding, the lack of state funding, coronavirus funding, Biden's funding, I think there's a lot more funding as well that we should seek from private capital. And I would do my best to do that. And I think in that way, while meeting business leaders in our communities and seeking to get private donations for the good of the entire school district, I would necessarily learn what people's causes were, what they wanted to see in terms of importance to them about the direction of our district. Thank you.
I think seeking feedback from the community, number one, that's a very close to the crux question, because in my reading of the job duties, it's very clear that we are supposed to go out and seek feedback from the community. I loved it's number 5 in the job description of the role of the board. Provide community leadership and advocacy and public education to build support in the community and at other state and national levels. So in other words, it's part of our job to get that support. So how would I do that? I founded a couple of things that I've already done. Years ago, when El Molino High School was having its own branding problems, so to speak, I formed an ad hoc committee called the El Molino Ambassadors, and I personally went out and contacted and arranged for us to take students, parents, and staff to the middle schools to communicate with them and, of course, get their feedback. So getting feedback means going out to where the feedback can come from. I'm very comfortable doing that. In fact, I thrive on engagement with community members. I really do enjoy conversations, questions, and answers. I think that we could encourage our staff, our teachers, to not just work in anonymity. I think that one thing the board could do is make a suggestion that our teachers invite the participation of parents in any way they're comfortable with. I did that in my classroom, and it really sparked my students and their families. They were very grateful to be asked to participate, to be involved, to be sought out. So I believe that going out to seek out that community feedback is really important. I'm pretty tireless in making connections. Like I say, it's something I enjoy. So community feedback, I think, and input would be a strength for me. Thank you.
No, thank you. You know, I have some experience in this arena, as I used to be the vice president of a school board long ago. And I took a lot of pride in making myself available to the parents and staff and teachers of that school district. One of the things, obviously, I published my cell phone number and my email and encourage people to communicate with me, and I would engage with them. The other thing is we have social media now, which I didn't have then. There's lots of different groups in our community that I would reach out, and as you mentioned, the question is to seek out feedback, is to get out into those groups, contact those groups, ask them if I could maybe attend one of their meetings, and if their membership or their parents or staff or whoever had questions and opportunities to communicate with me, I would love to sit down and have those conversations with people. I think it is important to listen and to hear different people's perspectives on different issues, because I think there's a lot to be learned. I really like what Bill said. I mean, I do believe by asking questions and listening for the answers instead of constantly talking, you actually can learn a lot about why people believe what they actually believe. And then maybe you can either take that back and educate yourself, or maybe there's a misunderstanding and you can take that opportunity to educate them as to why maybe they're misunderstanding the facts. That's something that obviously can't really necessarily be done in a board meeting, as there are rules that dictate how you can communicate with the public in that setting. So I would seek out those opportunities to listen, to speak to different groups, to have them speak to me. I would make myself available and to answer people's questions, to listen to their feedback, and to take those things all on board to help me to make better and more informed decisions.
Thank you. So now we go to the fifth and last question. And Steve, you're first this time. So what is your understanding of school finance, and what is your experience managing large budgets?
My experience with school finance comes courtesy of the many meetings that I've sat in on of this board over the years since I've been in this district, 10 years now, living in this district. I have experience in managing budgets on a project-by-project basis. I've actually picked up and moved 2 houses that would have otherwise been demolished, and I reestablished them, remodeled them, and lived happily in them by turn. So I understand the process of schedules and budgeting on that level. In terms of school budgeting, the funding formula, of course, is the LCAP, the ADA. The more students, the more money. There is the alternative, which, let me back up, please. Under that formula, that has resulted in a lot of the stress and strain on the West County school budget. I know that there's an alternative funding formula available called Basic Aid, which is designed for more rural districts where there's lower enrollment but higher property values. So that's my broad understanding of budgets. I do know that they have to be, the requirement is for them to be balanced 3 years into the future, which is a tough cookie to tackle, especially in the times that we're in, and this district has been not able to escape any of those budget problems. So I'm a tireless researcher, and I like to know, and I like to dig into things. So I would be asking each of you for your input, for your help, for your understanding, the new CBO. I would like to have many conversations with him about the ins and outs of the budget. And I also know that there are some outside sources of funding that for community schools, grants, and so all those things, I would look forward to doing my best to get up to speed and help our district cope with its budget.
Thank you. Patrick, you're next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Right.
I have a fairly good understanding of school finance from both my time as a former vice president of a school board, but also my time on the superintendent's budget committee last year. During that time, like Steve mentioned, a tireless researcher. I too, those who have been on committees with me or listened to me in different meetings, they'll see that I usually don't talk a lot until I kind of have a really good understanding of where it is that we're going to go. I took my role in the superintendent's budget committee very seriously. I reached out to the former CBO a lot. He probably got tired of hearing from me, but we sat down and went through the budget line by line by line, and so I feel like I had a really good understanding of kind of the predicament that the school was in terms of budgeting, because there's a lot in the budget that they're must-dos. There's not discretion to make decisions. Those decisions are made for you. So I had a pretty good understanding. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert on that yet. If I'm selected, I will do my best to become an expert. As far as managing budgets, as I mentioned before, I manage a very large budget, over $100 million on an annual basis. And the same thing is true there. It's a massive number, but when you boil it down, there's so many things that are outside of your control. And if there's 100 lines on the budget, maybe only 20 to 30 are things that you actually have the discretion to control on your end. And you have to work hard within those parameters to stay, quote, within budget, yield the most profitability in the private sector. But in the school, it's the same thing. You have a finite amount of money. You have to prioritize your decisions and what you choose to do based on how much money you have and what is the need that is presented and how much those costs are. So you have to spend a lot of time researching the actual costs, and then prioritizing what the needs are. If you have, for easy math purposes, $1 million to spend, and you have $2.5 million of things that you want to do, you only have $1 million to spend. So you're going to have to go back and prioritize which of those things is most important and which of those things are nice to do's but not necessarily have to do's, and make those hard decisions. So I do understand budgeting. I'm very good at it. I'm very good, again, I mentioned before, at taking those big, massive, complex things and breaking them down into smaller things and really understanding where that money is, where that money needs to go, and how much there is to spend, and how we prioritize to actually spend against it.
Thank you. Bill, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure, I would.
All right. What is your understanding of school finance, and what is your experience managing large budgets?
My understanding of school finance is how messed up it is. And that comes from 20 years. Well, that's a little exaggeration. During my 27 years, I was a negotiator 10 of those years. And in that role, I came to know a lot of the restricted ways the school boards have to operate. Yet I also understood the pressure the SCO puts on school boards as a result of how our ed code and education code sets up a quasi-labor management employee situation that is false. Because of course we're all paid, no matter what our position is, by the taxpayer. As a negotiator, I used to be able to analyze budgets and criticize school boards, to be direct, for their conservatism in all ways for the horrific 3-year out budget projection. I found it to be a lot of fiction at times, because when in negotiations and being told by management that there's such a broad chasm that could never be bridged with the ridiculous amount of money you're asking us for, and then making individual calls to board members and trying to show them a different set of facts, individually phoning board members, yes, that takes time, but I learned that there is a lot of fiction in the budget. And I've never managed a $100 million budget. I've only managed a very small pilot program for courses I taught. But I learned a lot about funding, and what I learned is we're never going to get enough, even with all the emergency monies that we did get this year, to adequately fund our students, pay our teachers, and take care of all these grounds. So again, I think that what I would lend is a questioning voice, a voice to say, let's think outside the box, let's do a better job at raising money from private funds, and not out in public, but making phone calls to the Sonoma County Office of Education, to the Superintendent of Sonoma County, making outreach for those times that you need to deviate from their plan. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And that concludes our question portion of the evening. So now we are going to play musical chairs again. So we're going to ask the interviewees to come down, and the board will come back up, and we'll finish the rest of the process.
Might we be able to ask the board a question? If my colleagues are interested in asking you a question? May we flip the tables? No? Too bad.
Yeah, you have public comment, so you could use that time. I have strict notes here.
Thank you.
All right, I want to thank our three people that we've interviewed tonight. I just want to acknowledge how I feel like we've all been probably interviewed at least once, and how awkward of a feeling it is just to be interviewed in general. and have to do that in a public space just takes a lot to come forward. So just appreciate each of you and for contributing this evening, especially with this new format of not only are we interviewing you in public, but you're also under these giant lights staring down at you. So thank you to each of you. So now we're going to move into public comment. We have one person that is here to address the board. Carmen, are you here? Carmen Singiani?
Hello?
Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you, Board of Trustees. I'm going to read my letter to the board that I wrote in support of Patrick Nagel's application. By way of background, I'm an Annalee alumni, class of 97. I serve as the president of the bandwagon, the Music Boosters. I'm secretary of the Sports Boosters. I'm also the co-chair and founder of the now dormant coalition, which formed to help save essential electives. My husband, Brian, he runs NorCal Images and volunteers his time as a photographer. He's also an alumni. And I have 2 kids at West County High, class of 22 and 23. You see, our family, we're very active in our community. In short, we have the highest respect for this school, the education it provides, the sports and essential programs it offers. We also value the school's role in our community at large as a place to show our town pride. Football games, we come together, we celebrate. We're here on the 3rd of July. My time with Patrick has proven to me that he shares these values. We work together on the coalition. We work together on saving essential electives. I am confident that as a member of the Board of Trustees, both his decision as trustee and how he communicates those decisions will emulate these values that my family has. In Patrick's time on the coalition and later on the Superintendent Budget Committee, he demonstrated his ability to synthesize the district's budgetary issues and articulate them in a manner understandable to members of the coalition and the Budget Committee. Further, Patrick has a much-needed pragmatic approach to the district's budgetary woes, all the while maintaining his focus on solutions that will support an excellent, well-rounded education. In both settings, Patrick not only took the time to intimately familiarize himself with the details of the district budget, but he also worked towards providing solutions rather than just a voice of distaste or distrust for the district. Moreover, in subsequent board meetings, discussions with the public, the superintendent and this board, Patrick has provided similar solution-based advice, and all in a respectful and professional manner. In his work, Patrick has also proven that he can offer this board the benefit of his strong leadership skills. Patrick brings with him not only his strong business background, but also his leadership skills in military. More than just understanding budgets, Patrick's supervisorial experience will be an asset to this district. For these reasons, I highly recommend Patrick Nagel for the appointment to the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Thank you. And we've gotten a couple more public comment cards. So next is Steve Griffith. Thank you.
Thank you. I know it's been a while since you heard from me. I relayed to you that one of my strengths is engaging people and asking questions, so I thought I'd put my money where my mouth is and take the opportunity in the context of these interviews to ask 3 questions for the board, if you don't mind. One question that I have is, what's one thing that you wish you had known going into your seat on the board? Second question is, What's one thing you wish the public, the community, the stakeholders knew about the board that you don't think they recognize? And my third question is, for any of the three of us, will you sponsor a workshop in managing email overload? Thank you.
All right, our next public comment is from Paige Greco.
Hi there, I'm assuming this is still on.
Yeah.
One of the things that I kind of wanted to bring up is that when we elected our last round of board members, the teachers union had a meeting to meet them and evaluate them and decide who we were going to throw our support behind. And I remember asking in that meeting of the people who were up, and Julie, maybe you remember this, what do you know about my community out on the river? What do you know about my community that is attending El Molino High School? And largely, I got a tepid response. More than anything, people were connected to Sebastopol, were connected to Annalee, which isn't necessarily to their detriment, but I do think that this board would benefit from having another perspective. And tonight, you have the opportunity to consider two very qualified candidates who would give you that perspective. Especially in a situation where we have a lot of new people. I'm a new person here, even though I've been at El Molino for 5 years. And I know that I feel keenly unheard. I would really, and I know that a lot of my students feel that way, misunderstood, unheard. I know that a lot of parents of those students, a lot of community members who don't live in Sebastopol feel that way. And you have an opportunity tonight to consider, in some small way, rectifying that problem. I would really encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you for your time.
All right, we have some letters to read.
I have two. The first one says, West Sonoma County Union High School District Board members, I'm writing to you in support of Patrick Nagel to fill the vacant board position. Patrick has been a member of the Superintendent's Budget Committee and Coalition. His skills in both leadership and management would benefit you, the current board members, but also the entire district. Patrick would strive to provide the best educational opportunities for all the students. He would be a strong addition to assist you as the West Sonoma County Union High School District moves forward. Thank you, and this is from Linda Helton. And then I have one more. This one's from Jesselie Mills. Dear Board, please appoint a representative of the El Molino community. Your West County constituents are upset with the lack of representation, and your decisions clearly do not have our interests in mind. Appoint someone whose decisions will have our interests in mind. It will also save the district a lot of money, not having to pay for a special election in the event of a recall. Thank you, Jesselie Mills.
Now we will move on to the next section of the agenda. That is, first, we're doing this in 2 stages tonight. So the first stage is that all board members will be given the opportunity to nominate 1 applicant each. And so the first step is that I will go through each of us. We'll each nominate 1 person. You have the option to nominate 1 person. If someone has already nominated the person that you want to nominate and you don't want to nominate anyone else, you can pass. You don't have to nominate someone. Once we have all of the nominations on the floor, then we will go to the process of hopefully having someone make a motion on one of the nominated candidates. We will then, if there's a second, we will then vote. If there is 3 votes for that person, that motion would carry. If there's not, someone else could make a motion, we vote. If there's more, so on and so forth until we have a majority of the people voting for a candidate. So right now we're just in the nomination phase. where I will just ask each person, and I'll go through the order of our seats, and then we will move on to the motion. So I'll go to to Jeannie Fernandez, the Vice President first, to make if you have a nomination you'd like to make.
I'd like to nominate Patrick Nagel.
And Angie, would you like to make a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Steve Griffith.
And Julie, would you like to make a nomination?
No, thanks.
And I do not have a nomination to make either this evening. All right, is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we nominate for the, excuse me, that's right. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Patrick Nagel as our, what's the word?
To make a provisional.
Provisional appointment, thank you.
We have a point of order question. So we're not whispering up here because that's not appropriate. Sorry, everyone. So point of order is that now we have a motion on the floor. If there is a second, I will ask for any discussion. We will call the question. If there is a majority vote for that candidate, then that candidate moves forward. If there's not, then we would entertain a motion, another motion for the other nominated candidates. So right now we're only considering the people who are nominated, and there's been a motion made for Patrick, so we go through the process with Patrick. If he is approved, we're done. If not, there would be an option to make another motion for the alternate nominated candidate. If that.
If I nominate a candidate, does that prohibit me from voting?
No, you can still, now it's just an open floor, so now you get to vote on the motion.
Okay.
So it's two phases, and we did get this advice from our legal counsel. This is our legal counsel advice. This is the process that they laid out. So it's, it's very confusing. It took me a while to grasp it. So there's two phases. We did the nomination phase. Now we're considering motions for the candidates that are on the floor for the motion, for the nomination. We now have a motion. We can all vote, no matter who we nominated or didn't nominate. We can vote on this motion. If this motion carries, we are done. If it's not, then we go back to the floor for more motions. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. So we have, is there a second?
I'll second.
Right, now we will go, is there any discussion that the board members would like to make before we vote? Go ahead, Jeannie.
I just wanted to share with the board the reason I made this nomination and this suggestion for appointment. It seems to me that Patrick has a pretty good grasp on our budget. He spent a lot of time, I know, with Jeff reviewing it. He asked a lot of thoughtful questions about it, and I think got a pretty good grasp of it. I also understand he manages a very large budget. And when you manage a large budget like that, you actually do have a good grasp on corporate, which maybe we're not corporate, but we certainly are a larger budget than most. And I just felt that that was really a huge plus for our district, being, in my opinion, that one of our greatest issues is our budget. And having someone that can really understand that and can really help drive our attention to that and the needs that we maybe have, that was my reasoning behind that.
Any other comments, Julie?
I think that all three of the candidates would bring something new and different to the board, and certainly have a strong presence. I am concerned with equal representation. So, I mean, that's a consideration that I am looking at before I vote. Not that anybody couldn't represent all areas. I mean, I feel like that's absolutely possible. However, I think the perception of equal representation is important as well.
Any other discussion? I mean, I think it's interesting that all three of our candidates this evening, well, minus Steve, because I think he lives in El Molino, his kids went to El Molino. We know Bill was a teacher at El Molino, and Annalee lives in Sebastopol. And then Patrick grew up in the rural reaches of the West County and now lives in the more Sebastopol area. So I think, interestingly, I all bring kind of a different perspective for both regions. I mean, I think it did strike me when Patrick was talking about his experience of, I think we hear a lot around our rural students and just how hard it can be to engage or connect to our schools. So I think that is something that he offers, which would be a valuable asset to the board with the motion that's on the floor.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All right, are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye. All right. That's, so we have a new appointment. So now thank you all. So that is the end of this process. Again, I do want to thank everyone who came forward. I know how difficult it can be to, again, be interviewed, especially in this spotlight and in this space. So thank you for everyone who was contributed, and we hope that we'll still be able to connect and bring forth some of your, contributions that you maybe wanted to make to the district. So thank you. And then we also have to now invite Patrick up, and we will swear him in for the seat. All right, so now we're gonna officially swear you in. So please raise your right hand. Okay, it's down the bottom. Okay. I, state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. Okay, congratulations and welcome. All right, and that concludes our meeting for this evening, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you all. Have a great evening.